Hey everyone, welcome back to another session of the Google MENA Digital Days. My name is Sachin. I'm a Google developer expert. And in today's episode, we'll actually learn how to build engaging and dynamic conversational actions for the Google Assistant. So if this is the first time that you're actually joining this channel, make sure to subscribe as well as hit the bell icon so that you can be notified for future videos. So with that being said, for today's session, we'll go through, it's going to be a bit different compared to our previous sessions. So I can see that we've, a lot of you have already joined. Super excited to interact with you all today. And for today's session, we're going to do something different. So for the first part of it, I'm going to explain some of the concepts behind conversational actions and how to build one. And the majority of today's session is actually be hands-on. So this is where I would need some help from you as well. Let's make this an interactive session. So let's build something together. And towards the end of today's session, hopefully the aim is for us to actually build a conversational action and also learn what are the different techniques or nuances that we have to keep in mind while building a conversational actions for the Google Assistant. So before we get started, as I said, a brief introduction about myself. My name is Sachin Kumar. I'm a Google developer expert. I'm also the Chief Technology Officer at Tupelo Life. I also head the Google developer groups in Doha. And if you guys are in social media platforms, do follow me on Twitter. And if you have anything that you need to do regarding building conversational actions, machine learning applications, or cloud, feel free to reach out to me directly so that we can interact and I can help you out with that. So for the remaining part, you can see that I have my own website as well. All the information that's there, the live streams, the YouTube sessions, the articles are all available there. And more importantly, with the whole COVID situation, I've gone digital as well. So if you're interested in step-by-step tutorials and learning in depth about chatbots, conversational actions for the Google Assistant, latest interaction with Googlers, my interviews with them, and also some of the new techniques in building AR applications, VR, and machine learning and more. All of those would be covered in my channel, which is called Tech with Such. So if you go to youtube.com/techwithsuch, you would basically see those information. And finally, I'm available in Medium. So if you guys like to read tech articles and follow step-by-step tutorials, all of that is available there. So before we get started, there's two more things to note. So we do have like an attendance certificate after you guys fill this feedback. The feedback is very important for us so that we can continue to give awesome content to the community. So your feedback is very important. So you do get an attendance certificate for this session. And we also have weekly sessions, weekly challenges where you actually complete quests to get like gift box or goodies, or you complete more quests to actually win a Google Home Mini. So super excited about this, because the best thing about these challenges is at the end, if you win a Google Home Mini, whatever you learned today, you can actually try it out directly onto your Google Home Mini. So super stoked about it. So this is my YouTube channel, which is Tech with Such. And you can see there's already a lot of videos out there and playlists created. So if you're a beginner, if you want to get into chatbots, learn about Dialogflow, learn about the Google Assistant and AR, VR, or machine learning, go out there, subscribe to the channel. The link is provided there. And the links will be also provided in the live chat as well. So you can click on it, subscribe, and stay updated. And we can have these live sessions and interactions over there as well. Okay, so today's session is a bit ambitious in terms of what we're going to attempt today. So just to give some context to people who are joining us for the very first time and want to know more about the Google Assistant, here are some quick introductory details about it. So the Google Assistant is your own personal virtual assistant from Google to get things done in the most helpful manner. Okay, so think about getting your daily reminders, setting alarms, to playing music, to controlling your lights around the house, or even in my case, I have my lights as well as my door lock, my curtain, all of that kind of linked and automated, and everything is controlled via voice. So interacting via voice is one of the major advantages of actually using a virtual assistant, and Google Assistant is one of them. And as developers, why is it necessary for us? What is in for us as developers, or startups, or business, or entrepreneurs? Why is it important for us to actually build something for the Google Assistant? What is it in for us, right? So this slide pretty much sums it up. You have the Google Assistant right now readily available across 1 billion plus devices. 1 billion plus devices. That's right. So you can imagine the amount of reach that you get as a brand, as a company, as a developer, building your own applications, voice applications, or actions for the Google Assistant. You have reach across all of these devices. And unlike your mobile application, where you have to build the application for iOS and Android, and then probably upload that into the Play Store, you expect the users to actually download the application and interact with it. You don't have to do all of that. Once your voice action or your action for the Google Assistant is published and approved by Google, users any part of the world using your device, using any device powered by Google Assistant, can easily trigger your action just by talking to it or just by having a conversation with it. So that's how powerful voice applications or voice actions are. And that doesn't mean that, okay, what happens to our existing applications? Yes, your existing applications would still be there. But think about building for voice as an extension of what your current applications are already there. So you might have a mobile app or a game or anything that like a business or service related application, which you might actually have on your phone. But if you want to extend the functionality by just having a simple conversation, you can use the Google Assistant. And we do have a growing audience as well. Again, as I said in the previous sessions, this slide doesn't cover most of the supported languages. You have a lot of languages already supported. And if you're looking for Arabic content, the Google Assistant is actually available in Arabic as well. And before we actually start looking into the frameworks, what are the different components over here, let's actually understand. Let's take a simple use case as an example. You have the Uber app, and I'm pretty sure that pretty much most of us would have at least tried to have one or two rideshare applications. And with that, let's go through the experience. You open up the application, you'd have to choose your location or your destination and search for it, place it, and then you need to choose which car you want and all of those things. So the amount of interactions right from searching for the app is, first of all, it takes a lot of time because of the amount of apps that's currently available in our phones. So first you need to search for the app, click on it, choose the location, set the destination, and everything is there. So you need to go through a set of steps or user interfaces while actually navigating your application. In this case, what we are going to do, if you're having an action, for example, let's say talk to Uber, or say Uber, or hey G, get me an Uber. So what will happen is immediately it knows, based on the permissions that you have allowed for the first time, of course, it will know the location where you are in, and you would get your Uber right in front of your doorstep just by having a simple conversations. So conversations are actually a pretty powerful tool. We're all used to it on a day-to-day basis because we're all humans. The natural way that we converse with each other is through voice conversations. So it's actually a pretty powerful tool, and building for building with that specific medium is even more powerful because you have access to a wide range of devices. At the same time, people can interact it in a much more different way than they are used to using mobile applications and web apps. So speaking of the Google Assistant, some of the major components is we have the Google Assistant itself, which is your own personal virtual assistant from Google to get things done for you in the most helpful manner. Then we have the devices with the Google Assistant built in. So if you could see in my screen, I have the Google Home here. I have the Google Home Mini somewhere. I have the smart display in my bedroom as well. So we have all of these different types of devices with the Google Assistant built in. And finally, we have Actions on Google. So what is Actions on Google? That's where we actually extend the functionalities of the Google Assistant. So by default, Google Assistant can do a lot of things, right? So if you have never tried Google Assistant, make sure to download the Google Assistant app on iOS as well. You have for a Google Assistant available in both Android and iOS. And make sure to download that and try out the Google Assistant. And it's a seamless experience. You'll have so much fun with it. And there are different ways of how you can actually build for the Google Assistant. Let's say you can be you can do smart home automation. Like let's say if you have your own smart lights or any devices and you want to actually integrate Google Assistant in it, there is a process for that. We also have the Google Assistant built from a conversational standpoint. So today we are going to build a conversational action for the Google Assistant. So typically, we have the Google Assistant works in this way. You have a user. So let's say I'm sitting here. This is the Google Assistant, and we have your action or your application that you have built. So whenever I have a conversation with the Google Assistant, it would basically gather the information from me. Basically, if I'm talking to it, it's going to do the speech to text conversion, the NLP, the machine learning, everything is handled by the Google Assistant. And based on the conversation that I'm speaking, it will identify that, okay, this person is actually talking about this person is talking about this specific voice application or action. So let me pass that information and provide it to that specific action. And once that action receives the data, you can do your own parsing. Your application would do your own backend logic and send back the response back to the Google Assistant. And the Google Assistant would then understand, okay, I need to convert this and convert the text into speech and provide it back to the user. So for our users who's actually joined us from different streaming channels over here, if you have seen my previous episodes where we built conversational actions, you would have seen we've used a different tool called Dialogflow, right? So Dialogflow is a great tool where you can actually build chatbots and also integrate them with the Google Assistant. But Google actually went back to the drawing board and felt that we have Actions on Google, which is a developer platform for the Google Assistant. But for us to actually build a conversational action, we had to go to Dialogflow, which was another tool. And you had to switch between Dialogflow and Actions on Google to actually go through the entire experience. So they said, what's the best way that we can kind of unify all of this and build a great tool which kind of makes sure that everything is kind of streamlined. So that's when we actually came up with the Actions Builder. So if you're seeing this Actions Builder for the first time, it's pretty brand new. It was very recently announced. It's a great tool to get started. If this is your first time actually building for the Google Assistant, this is actually a great time to actually get started with. Okay, so with that being said, let's go through some of the high-level overview of the Actions Builder. And after this, what we'll do is let's start actually building something. We have crossed 15 minutes into our session, and the remaining time, as much as possible, we will learn some of these concepts as and when we are building. Okay, so that's where I would need some of your interactions as well. So with that being said, let's dive deep into what is Actions Builder. So Actions Builder gives you a powerful and easy to use web-based IDE that's integrated into the Actions console. So when you start building for the actions, you have, if you look at the UI, you have the top part, which is the top menu. So you have overview, develop, test, deploy, and analytics. Everything that you need right from the start to finish to publishing an action, and also looking at the analytics, everything is available to you all in one UI. Okay. The next one is the left menu. So this part of the menu actually lists all the components. So we have scenes, we have intents, and don't worry if you don't understand what are scenes and intents at this point. We'll understand these concepts while we are actually building this. The third one is the build area. So as you can see, this will give you like a visual flow of what exactly is happening in each scene, right? So for example, here you can see this is the main invocation. From the main invocation, I am transitioning to a scene called start, and from start, there are different intents that it's linked to. Okay, and finally, we also have the details area where we can actually see the configuration. So whenever you click on each of these components or intents, or even one of these responses or prompts, you get to see a configuration screen over here on the right, which pops up. So for each one, you can directly go and configure the configurations. So it's as easy as, let's say there's not too much of coding involved in this. Of course, you can build. So you'll actually see today, the majority of the part of building an action is actually using just the UI. Of course, we would go and to make it more engaging and dynamic, we'll have to go and add our backend logic to it, connect it with Firebase cloud functions or your own cloud functions. You can actually do that as well. So we'll see a lot of that today as well. So I'm not going to go into all of these. Again, we'll cover each of these sections while we are building. And the next thing that we'll do is to go over to console.actions.google.com. So this is the place where you actually go and build your actions for the Google Assistant. I'm just going to switch to another account. Okay. So if you're building this, if you're coming to the screen for the very first time, you would actually see a different UI over here, but either way, it's going to be the same. So since I have more projects that I've already created or tested out, you have all of these listed over here. And before you actually, I can see, could you please show the slides on the full screen? Yes. So I think we can actually switch to the full screen over here so that I hope it's visible for everyone. So now that we actually have here a list of projects, or if you're coming here for the very first time, what I want you to do is, even before you actually start building this, there's something that I would like you guys to do. So you can open up a new tab and search for activity controls. Okay, search in Google for Google activity controls. The first link that you get, click on that and make sure that you've turned this toggle button as well as the checkboxes. So the reason why I ask you to do this is when you're building for the Google Assistant, it needs certain permissions. And at the end of the day, if you're using the same Google account that you're using, let's say for building this action, and if your phone is actually configured to that same Google account, you can actually directly interact with your action or voice application directly onto your phone as well. So it's actually a great way for you to actually test it out. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and start this. So I'm going to go and click on new project and give it a name. And the moment you create a project, you'll be taken to this beautiful screen where everything is streamlined right now. So if you're into smart home, you can click on this. If you're building for games, you can click on this. If you're actually, since we are going to create something from scratch here, we are going to build a unique conversational experience for our users. Let's go ahead and click on custom. And again, uh, the thing that I love about this new console where Google has recently launched is you have a lot of things to actually help you learn how to build these actions, right? So you can actually try out different sample projects to actually go and explore that and learn key concepts from it. But at the same time, what I'm going to do right now is let's actually build something right from scratch, right? So over here, I'm going to click on blank project and I'm going to click on start building. So this would automatically create all of the things that's required for me behind the scenes. And another important thing about the new actions builder is this is actually designed in such a way that you kind of cater to both the audience. For building for voice, we have conversational designers and we have developers, right? So conversational designers can actually come use this UI and actually build the entire conversational flow. And you as developers can use something called as Actions SDK, where you can completely pull down this project as a file-based structure into your local environment and actually have everything available to you in your local IDE. So from there, you can actually call web services, connect to backend, do a lot of your backend logic. So again, that's something that we will cover in one of the future episodes. But here, I want you guys to actually explore the actions builder. So a few things to keep in mind. Again, the first thing that you would see that is it has directly come to the develop tab and the settings is highlighted. So this is a place where you actually go in and create your own display name, or I call it the action name, right? What would you call your action? So in this case, let's say that if we have to do something like GDG Doha, talk to GDG Doha, or talk to GDG Mina, then it would automatically understand that, okay, this is the name of your action. Of course, you cannot just use any brand names directly like that. You need to own it first. You cannot use uh, you know action names where existing brands are already available like Google, Nike, and stuff like that. So you need to make sure that your display name or action name is unique and it aligns with what your action is all about, right? So if I say talk to Dr. Music, and if our action is nothing related to music, it doesn't make sense, right? So make sure that our action or your display name actually reflects that. And one of the cool ways of actually trying it out is you can click on this and speak, record what your action name is, and see if it is actually getting translated into the right name. So you need to actually test it out so that majority of the users when they are speaking to the Google Assistant, it is capable of handling that. The bottom part is where you can choose your assistant voice. So you have different voices to choose from. So I will leave that as it is. And what we'll do next is go to the main invocation. So this is the first step that you need to do. So we've looked into the settings. We can set the display name at the end or at any point that you want once you have decided it. So I'm just going to go into the main invocation. And this is actually the beauty of the actions builder. You actually get to see a visual representation or a blueprint of how your actions are actually built, or I would call this the conversational flow, right? So I'm just gonna keep this over here. And if you had given, let's assume that under settings, if I had given GDG Mina over here, it would automatically fill this up. So whenever the user says talk to GDG Mina, it will then trigger this main invocation. So this is your action that happens. And right now, all it does is, if I click on this action, what is it doing right now? It's just saying it will automatically send a prompt. So prompt is basically, think about it like a response, right? So from a response standpoint, it's just going to say start building your action by defining main invocation. So this is the default message. So if you had to go and actually test this out right now, you'll actually get this. The Google Assistant will actually give this as a response for your action, and it will end the conversation. You can see within the same invocation, it will go and end it. So it's as easy as it is. So from all you have to do is, from your application standpoint, think about how your conversation flow is. Design it. Just pull up a friend and have a conversation with him. You being the assistant, and he or she being the you know the normal user. And for the first time when you're interacting with your action, have a conversation with the user, an actual user, and record that conversation. So exactly how we interact with each other, and try to bring some of those concepts directly into this tool, right? So that's how that's some of the best ways to actually build conversational actions, because it's completely different from the way we are used to building mobile applications and web applications and so on. So we are limited by screens and UI, right? So as a user, if I'm interacting with an app, I have buttons or clicks or screens to navigate. That's all I have. I'm limited by those constraints. But from a conversation standpoint, I can have any conversation with the assistant. So it's completely natural, but at the same time, it's scary, because I can actually give a statement or a conversation or a phrase that the Google Assistant cannot understand. So in that case, we do also have some of the options to actually handle that. So this whole session, to make it engaging and dynamic for your building actions, is the reason why I wanted to kind of show you some of these concepts. So let's actually go ahead and continue with this. So we have the invocation name. So what I'm going to do next is, I'm going to spice it up a little bit. I'm just going to add a text. Okay. And the great thing about this tool is also you have the entire thing represented in both YAML as well as JSON format. So whichever you're comfortable with, you can choose that. Just gonna paste something. Save this. Okay. So right now, what's happening whenever the user talks to the Google Assistant saying talk to invocation name, it would automatically invoke our action. And what does our action do over here? All it's doing is, it says, a wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the mythical land. So we have some greetings. That's the first part of a application, right? So from a designing for voice, we also have to always think how we can direct the user to a specific action. Because voice can be, so if you have the entire conversation so open-ended, you're not actually directing the user. So think about this. Instead of actually having this response where I'm saying like, greetings, adventurer, welcome to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Based on your clothes, you're not from around these lands. It looks like you're on your way to an epic journey. Okay. And then we have a follow-up response to this. But if I just said greetings, you would not know what to say next. You would probably say again, greetings or hi or hello, and you can just go on a continuous loop. So it's always important that you kind of give your initial greetings, you kind of mention what exactly your action does and direct the user, give them some options so that they understand what the whole thing is all about. Okay. So instead of actually ending the conversation, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to transition to another scene. So think about the main and invocation as your first main scene. From here, you want to transition to another scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create another scene. I'm going to create a new scene. So you can either create it from here, or you can actually go under scenes on the left menu and create it from there. So here, as you have seen, I've invocated the main action. From there, before it used to end the conversation, but instead of ending the conversation, right now we are transitioning to a new scene. And the whole the great thing about this new actions builder is if I click on this right now, it'll automatically open up that scene. You see how intuitive it is. So from a conversational design standpoint, you can actually have a complete blueprint of how your conversation flow is happening. Okay. So we are in the start scene now. So in the start scene, again, you can see we have actions.intent.main. We have a transition over here, and then we have different components that's available, or settings or configurations that we can handle over here. So what we'll do next is let's actually go to on enter. So from our main invocation, we are greeting the user with a prompt, and then we come on to the new scene. So what happens to the new scene? Once we transition to the new scene, the first thing that we want to do is ask a question, right? So what I can do is on enter, you can click on this. You can clearly see what are our options. So when the user first enters the scene, you can either call a webhook. So this can be your backend logic where you can pass the information, or it can be a prompt. So here what I'm going to do is again something very similar to what we have done in the first part. I'm just going to paste something here and save this. So all I'm going to do here is, before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told? So can you see how we are kind of directing the user uh, to a specific set of action? Now, from this kind of conversation, right, we've kind of directed the user to possibly two answers. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told? We can either say yes or no, right? And for that, what you can do is within the UI, you also have something called as these. You can insert content or you can insert suggestions over here. So I'm just going to insert two suggestions, basically yes, and another title saying no. So what's going to happen is within this UI, uh, within the UI, when the user is interacting with your action, we'll have suggestion chips at the bottom which will guide the user. You can either say yes or no. Okay, so let's save this. So what we've done so far is we've created a prompt in the main invocation. We've added a greeting over there. Instead of ending the conversation from there, we've added another scene called start. And within the start scene, what we have done is the moment you enter the start scene, the first thing you ask is, would you like your fortune be told? So what we are going to do right now is let's actually go ahead and test this out and see how the conversation is behaving. So I'm going to hit test. Let me also go back and see if there's any live comments. Okay, let me also make sure that we zoom in a bit. Okay, so this should be fine. Okay, so things to note, you can actually trigger. So this under the test is basically your simulator. So with the simulator, it's basically like you don't actually have to own one of these devices. You can actually test it out directly in the simulator. So let's say by default it's the smart display. You don't have a smart display device at home, but you'd like to see how exactly it behaves um, in a smart display. So that's basically what the test simulator is all about, right? So I'm just going to trigger our action that we have built so far. So you can see talk to my test app is there. I can either use a mic and talk to it, or I can click on these, which are suggestion chips.
The test version of my test app. A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you are on your way to an epic journey. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
Okay. And all what we have built so far is this specific action, right? So the important thing to keep note over here is, do you see how Google has automatically captured the first greeting and the second part, the second prompt? So the first prompt that we've added the main invocation and the second prompt together. That's because the think of prompts like a bucket or a queue. So as and when you add a prompt, it goes into the queue, and the next prompt goes into the queue. So whatever is there in that specific bucket or queue, when your action is triggered, it comes out in that specific order. So since we transition from the main invocation, going back into develop, since we've transitioned from the main invocation to the start scene, right? And from the start scene, the first thing immediately after entering what we're doing is we're doing this, right? Now, let's actually continue building this application a bit further, right? I hope I am seeing some questions over here. Is it free? Yes, it's absolutely free. Um, Informative session, thank you. So let's continue with this, and you can see how easy it is. I mean, with just what we have learned so far, you can actually go ahead and build actions or voice conversations for the Google Assistant. And if you're using the same account that you've used for building this project, in your phone, you can actually invocate it by saying, "Hey G." I'm saying G is because I don't want to trigger a lot of devices out there. But typically, you say, "Hey G," which is G stands for Google, with talk to my test app. So since we have not given an invocation name in settings, by default, it is going to talk to my test app. If it is going to be, if you have given a name, you say talk to GDG Meena, and it will automatically trigger this entire flow. So with that being said, let's actually go ahead and build this logic, right? We have yes and no, and it's going to be as simple as creating intents for that. So we are right now at this point just having yes and no as suggestions, like just showing the buttons. But when you click on the button, nothing will happen because we don't have anything to relate to that. So what we're going to do next is, when user says yes or no, you see something here called custom intent handling. You click this one, and what you're going to do over here is add a new intent called yes. So what is an intent is basically, think about this. If it's an appointment scheduler, what would it be? Like your intent of that uh, would be to set an appointment, right? So here, whenever the user says anything related to yes or no, sorry, yes in this case, so we have created an intent called yes. So by default, if you look into the left navigation menu, you have yes as an intent. At the same time, if you go, you can also go and create a new intent here saying no. So you see how we're kind of designing from scenes, we are going into prompts, and the prompts is giving direction to the user, and based on the direction, the user might say something similar to these intents, right? So the intent of this user might be to say yes. So what happens next? What you can do is click on the yes intent, okay? And all you have to do is feed in some of these training phrases. So designing conversational applications is basically like you have to teach your voice application. So in this case, we are going to build yes. So if the user is actually using a mobile phone, he might be lazy, so he might actually type Y. He would also say something like, I would. Okay, so here, getting an error. Make sure you save this. Okay, let's handle that one by one. So you can also see if there is any errors, the new tool will actually guide you on what those are as well. So we have a yes intent. We are just gonna type in what are the training phrases, what the user would say. And once that is done, you can see that the errors are gone, right? Now, the same thing goes for no intent. I'm just gonna type few. Okay, I'm gonna hit save. So typically, what it means is you need to basically make sure that all your training phases. See here, by default, it's saying please enter at least 10. Okay. So intent handling for yes in local English needs a non-empty transition prompt, candidate, or function name. So let's go and see what that is. Now, with that being said, let's go back to our scene, start. So when it comes to our on enter, we are suggesting the user to either click the buttons yes or no, or the user might say something close to yes or no. And based on that intent, so we've created two intents to understand the user. And if the user says yes or something very close to that, the assistant NLU, so the Google Assistant NLU, natural language understanding, will automatically understand that, okay, this is what the user is saying. So this intent is matched. So here, when you look at our custom intent, when we clicked on this, added a new intent, here we selected yes. And at the same time, what should happen? So I'm gonna give another message over here. So if it is yes, I'm just gonna give a simple message for the time being. And at the same time, what do you want to do? The transition. I would like to end the conversation for now. So I'm gonna hit save for that. And at the same time, if you'd like, you would also like to handle no, right? So I'm just gonna create another intent, hit no, click on a prompt, and I'm gonna say, give another prompt. And what would we would like that to also be the end of the conversation. So if you have any questions up till this point, feel free to leave that in the comments below, and we can definitely have a conversation about it. Can we use it to build games via sound instructions? Yes, of course you can do that as well. So that's one of the comments that I've seen. So with that being said, I think we've kind of built a very simple voice action. All it does is, let's actually go through the flow now. When we invocate it, we are transitioning to the start scene. From the start scene, we ask a question, whether you want to continue on your quest, yes or no. Based on those questions, we have created intents for those, and we've added training phrases to those intents, and we've kind of handled that or linked those components directly into the scene. So whenever a yes is matched, we say this is the message that needs to be read out, and we end the conversation. Whenever no is matched, again we have a prompt and we have a specific conversation that is read out. So if I actually close this configuration screen, you can see how the whole blueprint is, right? So let's actually go ahead and test this application right now. So all we have done so far is just building simple conversational flow. And we'll actually dive deep into kind of spice this up with more configurations and different ways that you can actually use to actually build better conversational actions. And the other thing that I would also like to highlight is on the right side of the test simulator. So this is another great tool called the event logs. You can always reset the test. And as and when your conversation is happening, as a developer, it's easy for you to debug the conversation because you get to see the entire flow over here as well. So let's go ahead and trigger our action by saying talk to my test app.
Getting the test version of my test app. A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you are on your way to an epic journey. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
So you can see how we have the questions being raised to us. So we are directing the user with our prompts to a specific action. So I'm just going to say yes over here.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
So that
Can you
means
try again?
So that means it has not understood, or our application has not captured whatever the changes that we have done so far. So if you're facing actually some of these changes like this, what I've noticed is the Google team is actually working on this as well. So it takes a time for the action to actually reflect as well. So let's try the no.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
So both of these have not yet reflected. So typically what I do is you come here, you say the yes intent, you check if everything is fine in your JSON as well. Just gonna save this one more time. No. Just gonna save this as well. And let's go ahead and wait for it for a bit, and then we can test it out as well. So if you have any questions in the meantime, you can actually go out and leave that in the comments as well. So I'm gonna reset this test one more time, and hopefully we have this working right now. If not, we can actually go ahead and continue building our application with, adding additional functionalities and finally test it out.
Getting the test version of my test app. A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Okay.
Can you try again?
So if you actually look at our conversation here on the event log, so this is the starting conversation, right? So we've gone into the start scene. On start scene, we are seeing the response. And finally, we wait for the user's input. The user says yes or no. And then either the intent matching is not happening or we've not trained it much. So we might have to train it a little more. So that's something that you need to keep in mind while actually working with conversational actions. Okay, I can see that the intent is being matched here, but let's go ahead and see if it is actually being matched in our test application. So I do get this error here, might be something to do with that. So anyways, this whole application that I'm doing over here is directly available for you in the code labs, as well as you can actually follow my YouTube channel as well. So this entire thing is actually available for you over there. So it's very easy for you to actually go step by step and build some of these concepts. So next, what I'm gonna do is our initial greeting that we had. I just want to kind of right now, because whenever you see this, when you go into the test, you actually just see a text message or a text that is being read out to you, right? But what if you want to show something a little more meaningful? So what you can do is you go over here. So go back to develop, and let me see if I can add a card, right? So you go back to your main intent, go back to your card. Okay, so instead of just a speech tag, if I have to say a content, all you have to do is just like add a card content and add this. And if you want to know what are the, let me actually zoom back a bit. So, and if you actually want to see what are the different elements that you can add, you can always click on this. So the great thing about this tool is also about the whole documentation being readily accessible for you, so that you can refer all the information directly from the UI. So I have this uh, card content. So I've built something before, so I'm just gonna paste this over here. So again, here, as I mentioned, it's gonna be a little bit different, right? So a speech is already available. So I'm gonna show a card with title as greetings Earthlings, and I'm gonna change the title to GDG Meena. And I'm gonna also put a text over there and say that the URL is URL of the image. So I'm going to add an image of the Google Assistant logo. So in your case, you can add any other logo that you have depending on your brand or persona. So let's go ahead and save this. Okay. Let's actually see if our test application is working right now.
Here's the test version of my test app. A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome to the mythical land of Griffinburg. Based on your clothes, you are not. Your future depends on the aid you choose to use for your quest. Choose wisely.
So now you can see that
Stranger.
our action has is actually reflected. So it does take a little bit time for our action to actually reflect back and come onto the screen. So that's something the team is definitely working on as we speak. So the feedback is definitely there, but you could see whatever we built with the yes or no intent, that's kind of reflected over here. We still have the other change that we've just added, which is basically adding an image and a card and a title to it. And before we actually go ahead and do some of the other things, what I would also like to do is I would highly encourage that you guys actually try out SSML. So I will tell you what SSML is. I will show you how it works. So if I actually open up a new tab and search for, okay, so this is speech synthesis markup language. So SSML is nothing but speech synthesis markup language. So think about this like HTML for voice. So you can actually design your conversations using voice and have all of this directly using, here you can say, instead of trying to convert this as a word, you can interpret this as characters. So it would read out as SSML. So a lot of things. So for example, in this case, let's go down, and you can also change the tone of the user, the pitch, the elevation, all of that can be done over here as well. So here you can see that it's an audio of a cat. Here You can also,
World Wide Web Consortium.
even though you're giving as W3C, if you put an alias as World Wide Web Consortium, it would actually read that out as well. So SSML is actually fun. I would highly recommend that you build your actions based on the responses based on SSML. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is try and add SSML into our application. So let's go back to develop. And if you guys are out there and if you have some ideas of actually building an SSML tab quickly, go out, feel free to actually go out there and construct a simple SSML based response and send it to me. And if you're thinking, where do I get musics and sounds and all of those things, Google actually provides something called as Google Sound Library. So you can see within the sound library, we also have all of the information that's available for you to actually build so here you have all the sounds that you need. So alarm clock related, different categories, animals, ambient sounds, all of those information is available for you. So you can actually make your conversational actions more engaging by adding sound effects, to adding background music, to even changing the elevation of how your conversation responses. Because imagine that your user is interacting with your application or voice action on a day-to-day basis. Every time you say greetings user and the entire big initial greeting, the user would get fed up after a certain point. So you have to make sure that we do different techniques. So you have to use techniques like, if the user is coming for the second time, you can actually have a shorter greetings, right, compared to the whole initial one. You can add sound effects and different responses each time the user interacts with the application, so that he'll feel engaged and fresh and discover new things within your action. So that's something that you need to always keep in mind. So let's go back to develop. What I'm going to do is go back to our main invocation, change the speech tag over here, and I'm going to put I'm going to put an SSML over here. So just going to make sure all of that is properly formatted. So here you can see it's nothing but I have the speak tag. Within the speak tag, I have different emphasis levels like strong. So greetings earthlings will be a strong emphasis. And I have other information that's out here. I'm just going to change this to DDB Mina. And that's all. So let's go ahead and save this. So you can actually see how SSML is. So I think a very quick example that I would like to show of SSML is this is how SSML is. Everything is available in the slides. And I know that we are almost out of time. I would finally like to show one more thing, which is very important for us to make sure that our application is dynamic. So every time the user comes and interacts with your application, you need to make sure that the application is unique and different and gives a new conversational response. Some of the other things that you can also do is, so we talked about suggestion tips over here. We've added a card right now, so we'll get to see that. You can also use lists and carousels for your selection. And if you're building an action, so if you're building an action which would allow the user to be reminded on a daily basis, so you can use something called as daily updates. Again, all of this is directly available in the documentation. But if you feel that, okay, you need more videos on how to actually build all of this, uh, as I mentioned, subscribe to the channel Tech with Such. The links are provided in the slides as well as on the comment section. I'll be doing a lot of these videos, short, quick videos, where it will actually help you identify each of these features. So I hope that would be helpful. So with that being said, let's go back to our test application and see how our test simulator is doing over here. So wait for the test now to be completely enabled. And we're going to test this application right now.
Here's the test version of my test app.
There you go.
A wondrous greeting, adventurer. Welcome
Yay!
to the mythical land of Gryffindor. Based on your clothes, you are not from around these lands. It looks like you are on your way to an epic journey. Before you continue on your quest, would you like your fortune told?
Okay, so here you can see different things. We have a visual representation right now, which is much more nice compared to just a normal text-based response. You can have a different persona or kind of show off your brand using these techniques. And at the same time, you can see that the voice that was spoken out is completely different to what the text is. So the text can just be a high level highlight or overview of what your action is, or give some suggestions to the user. But your voice should be the spoken text, or response should be what is actually driving the entire conversation. Okay. And finally, with all of this being done, what we could then do next is actually go ahead and uh, do one more step extra. So you can see over here, this is very similar to what we've done right now, except for adding additional cards and SSML and all of that. You can try out the code labs directly in the official code labs as well. So it will actually take you step by step. And finally, what I would like to do is, what if you want to build something and you want to keep your users engaged? Because if you have the same response every time you greet the user, he's going to get bored of it, right? So to just demonstrate that, all what we are going to do is just copy this part. Okay, we're going to go back to our develop screen. Under our main invocation, where we greet our user, what we're going to do is, instead of using the prompts that's over here, we are just going to use a webhook. Oh, sorry. So this webhook can be called greetings. So just give it a name. So here you can see you would actually give it a name for it. So in this case, you're just going to call it as greeting. Okay, so let's call it greeting. Save this. And again, we've just defined what the greeting is, right? So you go to webhook. You can immediately click on inline cloud functions, turn that on. So this would actually initiate this whole thing. So here you can see that it's already generated some response for us. All we have to do over here is copy this content, and I'll explain what this does, and paste it over here. So the main thing to keep note over here is, whenever we have greeting triggered, okay, so we have a message that goes in over here. At the same time, we can also see that we have an additional condition which says, if the conversation.user is last seen, if this value is true, then it's a very different message, a shorter message or a greeting saying, wondrous greeting, adventure, welcome back. So these are different techniques that you can actually use to actually make your conversations more dynamic as well as engaging. So let's go ahead and save this and make sure that everything is fulfillment is saved and it has to be deployed. So let's go ahead and deploy this. So the cloud fulfillment deployment is in progress. Again, over here, uh, due to the test simulator, the one thing that we couldn't really see it reflect was the SSML, which is actually pretty cool. I can actually show another demo of it. But think about this, even that same SSML can be added directly over here. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can leave. Thanks a lot for all the great feedback that you guys are leaving. Definitely helps a lot. And I'm more excited about what you guys would actually go and build using this new tool. So here you can see we have hardly done any coding apart from the part that we've come down to this level where we are trying to make it a little more dynamic. So, and also understand a lot about conversational design guidelines and other aspects of building conversations. I will leave all of that in the slides. So the slides contain a lot more information which would actually help you guys out building conversational actions. So it's still in process. If there's anything else that you guys have any other questions, let me actually go through. Can I implement a certain set of conversational actions to multiple devices that are remotely located in different sites through the internet at the same time? So this came from Omar. Omar, if you could give me a little more context into what exactly that you mean by that, I can actually help in answering that. What's this application called? So this is Actions on Google Console. So the Actions Console. So this platform is where you actually build voice applications or actions for the Google Assistant. And what we've learned today or explored today is the new Actions Builder. So the Actions Builder is where we actually build using the new tool. And let's see. How to cancel some function that I enter. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, Ali, but you can definitely have different conditions. So there's something called as conditions within the scenes as well. So you can get to do that. So you see here conditions. So think about you have to capture 3 different information from the user. So for example, I'm just speaking for example, let's say you want to capture your name, phone number, and email address. Oh, sorry, let's say name and phone number of the user. You need to capture that information. So you can add a condition over here and say that until those entire slots, so these are called slot filling. And again, all of this is mentioned in one of these videos. So if you're building this, if you go back to the slides and towards the mid of this, over here in my channel, I've done a 1-hour video with Jessica from Google. So she's the Google developer advocate for the Google Assistant. She's amazing, and she's done a great job in actually going through a complete walkthrough of the Actions Builder, building some of these core components. Very similar to this, but here I've tried to show some of the other components that is available for you. But that specific tutorial is kind of like a video documentation for you, right? You can go through it step by step. I've asked a lot of questions. So if you're a developer transitioning from Dialogflow to this, you also have everything that's available for you in this session. So let's see if our webhook is all done. So it's still not deployed for some reason. So again, you can try this out. The Code Labs is definitely available. So what is the point from the actions build for me and other users? Okay, so Ahmed, think about this. When you're building an action for the Google Assistant, there's different ways you can actually build it. So we had Dialogflow before, where you can actually build chatbots and then extend the same thing integrated with the Google Assistant. But with this a tool like this, what you can do is Google has actually envisioned it from a future perspective as well. Think about companies actually building this. You might not have just one developer like us sitting and building and designing conversational actions. You might actually have a friend, for example, who's very good in designing conversational apps, and then you have you as a developer who's actually good in uh, building backend logic and connecting information with different services. So with these two people, we have designers as well as we have conversational developers, so they can actually work as a team. And with actions builder, the best thing is you can use the actions SDK, convert this whole thing as a file based structure. So whatever you've designed here will be automatically converted into a file based structure. You can use your local IDE and use version control, put it in GitHub, and kind of go through that whole process. So multiple teams can actually work on one specific sample app, one specific voice application or action. So let's see more questions coming through. So super happy about it. And let's see if our okay, I think the cloud function is now deployed. Let's go ahead and test this. And I'm gonna reset the test just to make sure that everything is fine. And I'm gonna test this out.
Let's get the test version of my test app. Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to the virtual space of GDG Mina.
No,
Based on your clothes, you are
it's not yet reflected yet. So yeah, again, I would highly recommend that you guys try this out. I know we've kind of gone overboard with time. Again, a lot of these would be covered in shorter tutorials as well. But right now, the application is there, the tool is there for you to actually go out and explore and build. So I'll take one last question. If I have a group of Google Assistant devices that I need to regularly update their conversational actions, is it possible to do so without collecting them and doing? Yes. So from think about this. You don't actually need to have your action that you're building is completely independent of your devices out there. So if you have a bunch of devices that you have in the field or you have in different people's home, all you need to do is update your action, and the next time update your action, deploy it, and once it's deployed, you'll automatically see that being reflected across all of your different devices. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Omar. Let's give this one last try.
Greetings, Earthlings.
So
welcome to the virtual space of GDG Mina. Based on your clothes.
So it's still not reflected. Anyway, I
understand, stranger. Best of luck on your quest. Farewell.
So our previous application or action that we have still that we built today is still being reflected in the test simulator. So this is something where Google is trying to really work on to make sure that the actions are reflected. So thanks a lot. I know that we've went overboard by 14 minutes. So thanks a lot for joining the session today. Feel free to connect with me directly in Twitter. My Twitter handle is available. And at the same time, what I would like to say is thank you all for joining and being active. It was a wonderful session. I had great questions raised today. So all the best to everyone who's actually getting onto this journey of building conversational actions for the Google Assistant. So again, as a reminder, your feedback is highly appreciated. At the same time, in terms of challenges, join the weekly challenges, complete the quest, and win a Google Home Mini. And make sure to tag me in Twitter so that you can actually connect with me. If you have further questions, I'll be more than happy to answer that directly in Twitter as well. So with that being said, my name is Sachin, and I hope you guys have a wonderful time. Stay safe and take care.